I would assume, being a business entrepreneur myself, it means that basically costs are somewhat fixed for you, but expenses are not fixed. So you've got to juggle that because you have to compete in the marketplace as well. You're doing more training, and you probably are more competitive in terms of recruiting, but you can't charge unlimited fees.
No, that's the biggest difficulty facing the industry right now, especially those of us who relied to a large extent on state-funded care. So when you're relying on reimbursement from the state, you cannot necessarily negotiate the rate that you want or the rate that you necessarily need, and that's why a lot of agencies also have a mix of private pay, where you can sort of set your own rates and work individually with clients and families to figure out an appropriate price. But relying on state and federal reimbursement is very difficult because that dictates 100% what you can pay your aides.
Well, since we don't have the mics on, let me ask you a question. Let's say the president nominated you as a cabinet minister of elder care. What changes would you make to our current structure, social structure, to improve the lot of the elderly moving forward?
First thing that I would do is, just as I said, I would definitely increase the reimbursement rates so that providers can be competitive in the market against the retailers that I just described, so that you can make home care a career for individuals who want a flexible job, who want to do rewarding work, and want to be compensated fairly. Starting with the reimbursement rates, that's the best way that you can make that happen for this workforce.
Okay.
Next, I would increase Medicare's scope in terms of what is covered. I can't tell you the number of phone calls or emails or inquiries we get from families who need care for a loved one and say, well, they have Medicare. And our response is, we can't bill Medicare for that. It's not covered. Unless you're getting discharged from a hospital or have a skilled need, you're not going to get Medicare funded home care. So I would expand the scope, which that is already happening to a bit of a degree with Medicare Advantage right now, but still has a long way to go. So that's probably the top two that I would lean on in terms of fixing, the system as it were today.
And with such a large percentage of the population getting older, I would have thought that they would be putting more pressure on having some kind of reform in this area, but it's not happening.
It's puzzling because I feel the same way, and this is what I do for my career. It's puzzling to me the little amount of attention that gets put onto this industry. I still have friends, family who, when I talk about what I do, are totally confused when you say, yeah, I work in home care, I own a home care agency. And the response is, oh, is that like a nursing home? No, not even close. In fact, it's the exact opposite of that. So the awareness of what this industry is and what it does is almost like you don't know what it is until you need it.
Right. Do you feel that there's a consolidation in the industry of the private companies like yourself? Do you think the large corporations, the large hospitals are going to keep consolidating?
Yes, I do. In fact, the future of smaller organizations, quote unquote mom and pop organizations in this industry is getting more and more challenging to stay viable, by the day. And a lot of that is what I described. It's reimbursement. It's the ability to pay your workers enough to keep them while still being profitable based on the rates that you're reimbursed. And trying to figure out the middle, and the overhead and the expense is really, really challenging. It's the margins in this industry are just so thin that unless you have a financial fortress of a publicly traded company behind you, it can be very challenging. So consolidation is happening, and it will continue to happen.
So I'm now going to become selfish. I'm going to speak for myself. Let's assume in the next 10, 15 years, this is an important issue for myself.
Sure.
What should I be looking at? My insurance policies?
Well, one thing to do, see if you have a long-term care policy. There aren't a ton of those being written anymore, but a lot of people purchased long-term care insurance 20, 30 years ago. A number of our clients use that. It's tricky to get started with it in terms of getting approved.
You have to be very healthy.
Yeah, exactly. And also, when you're not that healthy, it can be tricky to get the policy activated to demonstrate that you're sick or in need of help to the degree that the insurance company wants to start paying out on the invoices that they're receiving. So long-term care is certainly one thing to look at. But beyond that, people who don't have adequate savings, which that's most of us, end up spending down their assets and going into a nursing home and utilizing Mass Health and Medicaid.
Well, I've just seen that repeatedly over the last year, unfortunately, within my own family and with other families that live nearby, where they were fortunate enough to have in-house home care, so that they were able to finish out their life in a very peaceful and tranquil manner.
That's great.
You want to finish your life, in an appropriate
You want to be at home if you
Right.
can.
Right.
It's a pride issue.
Well, I like what you're doing, and we really appreciate having you on Radio Entrepreneurs. We hope everybody in Quincy is listening. We will try to do our best job to help that. Kevin, if somebody's looking for you and Best of Care, how would they do that?
bestofcareinc.com is the easiest way. You can always find me there, and you can find us on Twitter @bestofcare.
That's right. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for being a sponsor. We got more stories from Best of Care coming up right after these messages.